Welcome back to Cheap Pop, everybody. This is Derek Kirby, joined by my friend Matt Carlin here, as we are going to be looking at a 2019 horror film called The Wretched. Matt, thank you for coming on today. How did you like The Wretched?
Oh, loved it. I am definitely a nut for horror movies, and this was finally one that I could watch and not be horrified by how bad it was. So it was a good little turn, and kind of at the start of COVID when movies stopped happening, this was a nice little treat.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing being a horror fan sometimes because it is very much feast or famine. Like you'll have the great films, like the previous video we worked on, even though you weren't on camera for that, was we were going through the thing and doing all the like super detailed analysis of that, and that was a lot of fun. But you'll also have a lot of really, really bad horror films as well. And it's nice to see a smaller budget film like this, just a $1.2 million budget, end up being, I think, a pretty good film. It's if nothing else, a refreshing take on kind of the witch mythos. It feels different in that regard, and that helps it stand out, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to say with all the low budget movies that are out there, but this witch definitely felt a lot more real and scary, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
you're so used to the same witch thing over and over and over that, I mean, I don't even know if that's something people like to use anymore just because it feels so dry. It's like we've done that a million times. No point in even trying anymore. But this was definitely a new take on it that I appreciated.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, their immediate assumption is something like a Salem witch type witch in that regard. Like they think like broomsticks and
Yeah, you got the
black
hat, you got the
cats.
stick flying around. It's
Yeah, they
like,
think hocus pocus, right? They think something more
yep.
along those lines. Having this thing, which almost looks at times like zombie-esque, is just this like horrifying like amalgamation, and it adds kind of its own creative mythos behind it as well, which I think is pretty cool. Fun fact as well, I see here, according to IMDb, this film was technically the number one film in North America for 5 consecutive weeks during May of 2020 because virtually every theater was closed during the pandemic.
Yep, the drive-in times, as they call them.
Yep. If there was ever a time to claim that title, this would have been the time. So gotta appreciate that. This film was made in 2019, but I guess it didn't get a full theatrical release until 2020 when like 12 people and their uncle Lester saw the film. So that's
Honestly, I'm glad that it did so well, though, because it's like I would love to see another one or at least something else, whether in this universe or just something by the same writer, director. I would love to see more good horror movies. As always, it's like fishing through a big pile of trash. Occasionally, you catch something that's good, but most of the time, you're just sorting through the garbage.
Yeah. Well, while the pandemic did give it the opportunity to have that distinction as the number one film in North America for 5 weeks, it also obviously hurt its overall earning potentials. Cause like you think of like whether you're thinking like the original Blair Witch or something, films with like nothing of a budget that made like tens of millions of dollars. This one made 4.3 million. So like it still quadrupled its budget, like in terms of earnings, which is good. But compared to like other horror films, it didn't do that. It didn't like blow you away where it's like you get like Paranormal Activity 12
Yeah.
because like it's a budget of 1.2 million there and it makes like 88 million or something. So it's a uphill battle in that regard. I think it's a good movie. I think it's refreshing. It definitely is not afraid to go dark. Like that opening scene as well as is one of the more haunting, I think,
Oh,
ones
yeah.
of all that opening imagery of the rainy storm and all the strewn about like kids' toys. Like it could not be more like you think of like set designers, right? Like they talk about like kids' rooms is always like an embarrassment of evidence. This is a kid's room, like
Yep.
everything you can possibly think of. It's the same thing. Like in the rain, there's like 37 children's toys or crayons or Rubik's cubes, stuffed animals. It's just like what happened here? Like what kid left everything out here? But yeah, you go in and the babysitter finds out that like, oh, okay, she's locked in the basement and the mother, I guess, has been possessed by the wretched, the witch here, and is feasting on the young daughter she was supposed to be watching, and the dad just locks her in the basement as yet another offering. Like crazy dark. This film is not afraid to go after kids. That's usually the one thing that even horror movies are a little bit cautious about. And I think this movie axes off like 3 or 4 kids in its runtime.
Oh, it's great. I That's the thing that they're always the most afraid to do because they know that they're going to get backlash for it. Is if we hurt a kid, some parent is going to freak out and be upset about the movie. But yeah, this one's just like, oh no, let's go for it. And the second you kill a kid, I'm in. I don't know why. I just want to see it.
All
Like,
right.
why do we not have this? I just, I want horror to be a little more real. And there's not a lot more, terrifying than watching this thing just absolutely like murdering this child in front of you. You're like, okay, it's that kind of movie. All
Yeah.
right.
It definitely set the tone very early on where you were like, oh, okay. So we're not gonna pull punches then. And yeah, like as it progresses. So in the story, you have this teenage boy who's, I don't know, 16, 17, something like that, working essentially a summer job. He's staying with his dad somewhere, and the parents are going through a divorce. They're working at the dock, like I don't know what you would say, the marina, I guess.
Yep.
And in that situation, he has this friend of his that he's kind of interested in, this girl, and he essentially finds out that the people next door to them they're the ones who initially encounter the wretched, and he just kind of gets pulled into it by kind of spying on him, creeping on him a little bit, kind of sees it unfolding, and you poke the bear enough times, eventually the bear is going to turn its attention on you, which is exactly what happens. And this is it's interesting how the whole thing kind of progresses, because one thing I thought is like the witch's power, which there's not even like an actual name for the witch. I guess we just say the wretched, but I'll just say the witch for convenience sake. I don't think there's ever like a clear indicator of like what exactly her powers are. Like we know that she can like kill someone and like crawl inside their skin,
Which is
and
impressive.
it's very impressive and creepy for sure. And there's all kinds of body contorting, all great practical effects in this too. Like that was another, I thought, really strong thing. Um, and she's virtually unkillable. Like it implies there's only one way to kill her, and of course that's never explored in the film. Like exactly, like the character is actually trying that specific way, and it's a really creepy thing because she also has this kind of like siren like power where she can basically like speak to someone, and she feeds on the forgotten. So it's like she speaks to them, they forget a loved one, and then that makes it easy for her to carry off that loved one, preferably a child, and eat them, and it's like no one knows. And I thought that was actually a really clever way to kind of explain how in the modern world you could have, I mean, like you're going to run into issues, but like in a more modern world, how you could have people just disappearing and no one thinking twice of it, right? Like a small town, like, oh, how did little Billy disappear? Who? Like it kind of worked in that regard. I thought that was a nice take as well.
I just think that this witch or boo hag or whatever you want to call her should just be happy that there are still people printing out photos nowadays, because in a digital age it's going to be hard to scratch up all those screens.
Yeah, it's true. So she, for whatever reason, that was one of the things I was unclear of. She builds like these altars, as we come to see later. There was an altar in the family who she initially infected, the mother, in their house, like in the attic. And yeah, she scratches out like across the faces, kind of like in Paranormal Activity, which I mentioned earlier, the intended targets. And I thought like, well, that's a really weird thing. Like even if that's only for you, like that's a weird, because it's not tied to like a curse or anything.
Yeah.
Like she's very hands-on with her kills, literally. Even in the case of when she attacks someone later in the film, and she already has them by the throat, but then her wretched hand is like popping out of the wrist to try and like grab at their face. Like
That's one thing I was curious about. I'm like, when she's grabbing him and her hand comes
where
out
are
of
the
the sleeve,
fingers?
how is she still holding him at that point? Because I feel like she might have lost some motion there.
Yeah.
We'll let that one slide.
Yeah. The effect of it isn't to be thought through very much, but it's very, very creepy all the same. So yeah, it basically goes where she initially infects like the mother next door, who then is like kind of acting really erratic and doing all this like bone cracking stuff. There's a funny thing too, where the father of that family does not yet know like something's wrong. Like even it could not be more obvious that she's like weirdly catatonic and like standing naked in the window and doing all these like bone cracking contortions and stuff. And he's just like going about business. And then like even when they're having sex, like she makes like a point of like moving his hand before it can touch like her gross rotting back or whatever. I was like, ah, yes, because that would have been a little too obvious compared to all the other stuff he's been completely oblivious to. But it's one of those things where eventually her kid is creeped out enough that he hides next door. And there's a subtle hint on rewatch that I picked up on that at the time I didn't in the first viewing. So there's a twist that comes towards probably 80% mark of the film. And I guess spoilers at this point, we'll get into
Quite a
it.
twist.
Yeah. So we mentioned earlier that she can make people forget that they have kids. The father next door completely forgets he has any kids at all, even though they have a new baby and a kid that's probably 7 or something like that. And both kids go missing. Baby never found, by the way. So clearly the baby was eaten. Like this film, not afraid to go dark in that regard.
Oh, if you're looking under the crib, when the mom gets pulled under, there's a pool of blood.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, the kid's done. I mean,
Okay.
there's no coming back from
Not
that.
taken back to the tree like all the other victims, I guess.
Which I thought was interesting. It's like, why did she choose to kill this individual child, but then the rest of them, she's, got locked in her killer clowns from outer space storage system.
Yeah, I don't know. So the main character, the protagonist here, played by John Paul Howard, Ben, he's basically coming downstairs, sees the mother next door. The kid is saying like, yeah, it's my mom, but like, don't tell her I'm here. Like basically saying something's weird. I don't know what. And when the mother is asking essentially like where her child is, he's like, no one's here. It's just us. And initially that completely went over my head. I thought he screwed up and referenced like, oh no, your kid is here, or trying to imply like someone else is here. But it didn't like pick up until you get the twist later that, oh, she made him forget as well. He apparently has a younger brother, which kind of makes sense because he's got a cast on his, I think, left forearm with the name Nathan, I think it is, written on it. And it's incredibly like childlike handwriting. And I was like, wow, did you sign your own cast? Did you like break your, non-dominant arm and for whatever reason trying to sign it, it just looks like crap? I don't know. But that's a twist when they're escaping later from her. He realizes like, oh God, I have a brother, which is interesting. But it also makes me wonder like, well, if the brother was upstairs the whole time, how were you never aware of him? What would it be like if the kid tried to interact with him directly,
I think you close out anything that reminds you. I mean, and there's so many of those moments. So it starts off with the grandma. The grandma is, we're calling her grandma because she's old, is on the bus and she's talking about, hey, there's barely any space left on that cast, which when you're watching the scene, you're just like, what are you talking about, you idiot? His cast has almost no writing on it. But since we're not prepared for what's happening in the movie yet, we don't know that there's going to be missing children or anything. We're just aware that there's some sort of witch going in. But we kind of overlooked that. And there's so many other subtle clues, like the amount of plates that were on the table. When he goes to dinner with his dad's girlfriend, there's 4 plates there, 3 have food on them, and then there's 1 empty for him. And most people just don't think about it. You just keep watching and think, oh, well, maybe they had an extra plate for some reason. But they definitely pointed to something going on. It's just that nobody knew what to look for, I think. And it was just so subtle in a couple of spots that I think it's pretty easy to miss.
Yeah, for sure. So in the film, you have the main boy who basically discovers something is going on with the mother here, that she's possessed or something. He basically, in trying to get to the bottom of it, essentially draws her ire, and his friend that works at the marina with him and is kind of the pseudo love interest, she eventually humors and kind of goes along with it as well, which draws her family into it. Her little sister gets abducted as well. And there's this whole thing where he kind of like races to the park to try and like save the girl, but she's still taken into the tree, which is what the Wretched crawled out of. And this tree just comes and goes. Like it's not always there. It just shows up whenever. That's what I was also unclear on, is like, if she consciously puts it there or not there, why would she ever, like, why would it not be like closing a door and it's like, okay, I'm through and poof, no more tree. Now you can't find me. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
does the tree move? That's a question I had, and I wanted to go back and look at kind of some of the set pieces and see, does everything look similar? But I figured, it's probably going to look so off from the previous scene that it's going to be hard to tie them. But, we go through the first scene and they're obviously deep in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go later when he's at the docks and he gets in the fight, he's running to the woods and he finds this tree.
Quickly.
But to me, it felt like we couldn't have been that deep in the woods by that time.
Yeah.
So,
I think it moves.
yeah, I wonder if it either moves or maybe there's multiple trees. So maybe, one tree gets destroyed. It doesn't really matter because when we're inside the tree at the end of the movie, I mean, there's obviously a massive underground to this with caves and tunnels. So I think there's probably a good chance that this connects to multiple locations. And we kind of went in later thinking, hey, maybe the tree is the source of power or what keeps her alive, or at least we've got her trapped. But maybe that's not the case.
Yeah, it's very unclear in that regard. I think it moves, given like what you said, but it's never fully answered. So I mentioned he tries to go and save the friend's younger sister, gets knocked out, and when he wakes up, the tree is gone, and the thing progresses where eventually the witch's body in the next door neighbor's mother is deteriorating, like completely just falling apart, which makes sense. It's literally just a flesh suit at that point. So it's going to rot and deteriorate. And so she has to move to another vessel in this regard. And she essentially settles on the dad's new girlfriend, which you talk about someone that gets a raw deal in this film, man. She never does anything bad at all. She makes the effort and tries to befriend the kid despite being in an awkward situation. And she ends up being a witch's dress, more or less. Like, very.
I mean, that's what you get for being gluten free. They're
Yeah,
gonna take you out.
Yeah, the witch is just like, oh, there's an irony to this. But yeah, so she switches vessels. The kid eventually. So there's a thing where I liked the reveal of it. That the dad's girlfriend had become possessed. She's essentially trying to talk to him, and she's doing a really good job. As the film goes on, the witch's ability to act natural seems to get better, which I thought was actually kind of interesting, because it's like, if she's been feeding on people for centuries, right, shouldn't she kind of know how to act natural? And yet, like, when she's the next door neighbor's mom, she's like completely animalistic, like savage and everything. But she initially plays the part very convincingly once she's dressed up in the dad's girlfriend's skin, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, you have to earn that, like talking about like trust. And then she's like, I'm sorry, that's crossing the line. Like, plays it off really convincingly. And the only reason he realizes something's even wrong is because as she moves next to some flowers that are in a vase there, they start to wilt and die. And then he sees her as she really is. She basically tries to lunge at him. He grabs a knife and slashes at her. Illusion breaks. He gets arrested because it just looks like he attacked the dad's girlfriend with a knife.
It's got to look horrible on the outside. You're like, oh boy, how am I going to talk my way out of that?
So he's going carried off, but as she's getting tended to, she does that again whisper trick where she can like persuade people to either forget things or make them do things. As we learn, she's basically talking to, I thought it was a paramedic, but I guess it's a police officer, because the police officer then takes Ben like out to the forest, which I thought was, again, an interesting setting to choose, like just out away from anyone, and tries to make him, while possessed, drown Ben, which he almost gets away with. But you have I don't know if it's the canine dog, like it was a police officer, so I'm guessing it was his canine.
It's not. It's the dog from the beginning of the movie that barks at him when he steals the apple, the candy, like the candy sucker.
Oh, yeah.
The dog lives too. You can see it at the end of the movie. He's actually got like a tourniquet around his stomach.
Wow.
Which I was like, oh, they're like, nope, kids are dead, but we are not killing that dog.
Hey, man,
so
you can't break both rules.
I was like, man, I never would have thought about the dog after that moment. So I think it's so funny they went back and tried to be like, hey, it's okay. He's fine.
You pick your rule you're willing to play fast and loose with, but you don't break both.
Exactly.
So
So when he realizes that the, future stepmom, girlfriend, whatever, I thought it was the flowers that drew his attention to her. And when I went back and watched it again, I realized it's not. It's because she's pouring milk in her coffee. And he realized that she was lactose intolerant, which
vegan,
is why they
right?
harped on it. So I just thought that was interesting. I was like, man, I was not even picking up on that, but I'm
Another very
sure,
subtle detail. Yeah.
yeah, a little subtle thing that you just have to be paying close attention to. So I thought that was a good little touch that I mean, I was off until the flowers. Then I was like, oh, okay. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
missed that
Yeah.
completely somehow.
Yep. That's a very good detail. I definitely forgot about that until you said that. As soon as you mentioned the milk, I was like, why would milk? Oh, right. We just said gluten free and all that. So that, yeah, great details like that are scattered throughout the film. Um, the witch tries to then persuade the dad. I wasn't clear why the dad couldn't be swayed. Did you pick up on that?
I mean,
She
what
makes
I
several
got is
attempts.
she decided that she was gonna, go sexual with it. So she tries to, try to get him interested. Um, but I didn't really understand that part, and I kind of wish they wouldn't have tried so hard because I don't understand why she went for, okay, let's get something started. He's obviously not in the mood, but she can talk to most people and, persuade them into doing what she wants. And I thought the same thing. I thought she was talking to a paramedic, but then we're dealing with the cop. So I'd like to go back and rewatch that and see if that actually is the cop or the paramedic. But I don't know why she took that approach with the dad. And that's something I was kind of thinking about is why does she always go for the mom and not the dad? And my thought behind that is that the men are more
Susceptible.
impressionable, yeah,
Yeah.
susceptible. And she realizes that, hey, maybe I can't, you know, take a mother and convince her that she doesn't have a child, but maybe it's easier to do with a father. Maybe they're a little
True.
weaker willed. So I thought that might be a little bit of a commentary on that as, women are a little stronger when it comes to their own children, which is why she attacks them first. And
That's a good idea, a good theory on that. I was thinking with the with why she tries that route. I was wondering if it's because like the person that she's talking to, they have to be like willing when they hear, right?
mhm,
So you mentioned it, she's always in the guise of their loved one, the wife, the partner. And so they're willing to like, oh, I have something to say to you. And they're like, oh yeah, yeah. And they give their attention. But the dad in that case, he's so like mentally just out of sorts because of everything that's happened with the son. He's already his marriage is he's going through a divorce. His son he thinks is like high on meth or something and like attacking his new girlfriend. Like he's just completely out of sorts. And then she's like trying to like when she realizes she's not going to be able to reach him on that level to get his full attention, she tries the sexual ploy, is my guess.
yeah.
And it's like a last ditch effort, and he won't buy it. And so I forget how he separates from her because he eventually does do what the son told him to, which was to check the basement. And he ends up going into the house and he finds the abandoned carcass of the mom next door and the hanging body of the dad. So I don't know why she had him hang himself at some point. I guess
Yeah,
she was
not in the
just
cellar either. They were in like
attic, I think.
and it was it his or was it the neighbors? That's what I couldn't really tell because it was a distance away from their house, but I believe the neighbor went in there. Um, but it's like a huge workshop. I mean, it's
Hmm.
massive. There's 2 stories,
Yeah.
a bunch of tools on the bottom floor, but he doesn't initially find anything in the cellar. But then he walks over to the other thing. I can't really remember exactly what led him that direction, but
Well, he
uh,
finds the altar is
yeah,
the
yeah.
important thing. And at that point, his girlfriend slash the witch, in like full guise and everything, she has like a ritualistic headpiece on, which is for the people watching this on YouTube, they see like behind us the movie poster that like horned skull thing or whatever that animal head is basically like what she's wearing, like a display piece. She stabs him in the back, which again I thought was a weird angle. I feel like she could have instant killed him easily, snapped his neck, ripped his heart out, whatever. And instead she kind of goes like, I want the intimate kill. I want to stab him, throw him down the stairs, and then strangle him. Like brutal, but that felt like a change in her MO to me, because she didn't play with her victims like that otherwise. She was very to the point. But it all sets up for eventually the son to come in and make the save. He shoots her, puts her down with a gun, but it's temporary. That's when you then get the best, I think, effect of the movie, and that's her crawling out of the
Oh,
carcass
great.
of the dad's girlfriend and everything. They're very unnerving. It's your first real good look at the witch, I think, as well. You get a lot of good looks at her, and obviously the underground, like you mentioned, in her tree. But it's the first real good look, and it's just very unsettling. All the contorting and all the popping joints and everything. Um, but it sets up then as they're trying to leave. As we said earlier, the brother remembers, like, or the kid remembers, like, I have a younger brother. He runs upstairs. The witch has already recovered from being shot in the face and chest, taken the kid and run back to her tree. So now they got to run back to the tree again. And it sets up as well with his friend, the girl, the love interest here, Mallory, that was her name, for them to set it up. They're going to try and burn down the tree, but like they put down the gasoline, and it's like a last ditch effort that they're acknowledging. So he's going to go into the tree, into the base, to try and save her sister, his brother, whoever he can. And if he can't get out, he's basically telling her to burn the tree. And eventually he does save his brother, even though you see the witch eating the face of another kid. Just again, leaning hard into that thing. Saves his brother. I was surprised he found the friend's sister, because she had been gone a couple days at that point. So I was like, huh, I was pretty convinced she was going to be dead, but okay.
Yeah.
So he actually goes back, saves her, has like an encounter where I think she actually helps him, because the witch actually has him dead to rights. And she like takes a photo with like a Polaroid camera or something, and the flash blinds the witch, which allows him to grab like a sharp bone and stab her in the jugular, which again does not kill the witch, because as they're fleeing, the witch grabs his leg and they have to throw salt in his face as the dad, about to pass out from blood loss, rams the car into the witch's face and the tree. And apparently that doesn't kill the witch either. So the witch is borderline immortal unless the tree itself is burned.
That
Because
dad was very confident also that his kid was going to get out of the way. I mean, he didn't seem to hit the brakes or anything. I was like,
no,
man, if that witch just holds on a little bit longer, you are going to have some explaining to do.
yeah, and I think he's honestly on the verge of passing out. I thought he was going to actually die
Oh,
in
he
the
was in
crash.
bad shape. Yeah,
Yeah, because he's already like passing out. And I thought what was going to happen when I saw him come barreling through, I was like, oh, he's going to ram her. It's going to catch with all the gasoline that's already there, and it's just going to blow up, and he's going to die, but he'll have, saved his son and all that in the process. But no, we go to the next scene, and it's basically, I don't know how many days after, but the main character, his brother, they're leaving the area. They're driving back, like the mom is there, but like they're not back together. They're just all driving back together. And he has like a parting thing with the main girl. And I actually skip something a little bit that's actually really important, because it's another foreshadow moment. So we see that the girl Mallory, her younger sister that was taken by the witch, has been in therapy for some time. And the therapist is asking the sister, which I guess it's a guardian thing. Like, I don't know why she's telling the sister and not parents, other than the fact that they didn't bother to introduce parents.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out why she was having that conversation either, unless maybe she was there because her sister couldn't be there for some reason.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know. But she asks her about the tree. Like, the little sister made mention that they had to burn the tree, which I thought was interesting, because it's like, you weren't there when they said that. So why was that discussed or brought up after the fact and then decided against, apparently? And Mallory basically just shrugs and says, like, oh, she must just be having nightmares. And so that's the first red flag at that point. But then you go to back to the marina, you see the families leaving and everything. Ben kisses Mallory, and it's like, oh, it's this cutesy little moment or whatever. And she like gives him the flower that's tucked behind her ear. And as he's driving off and reminiscing on his little crush and his star crazed summer of fun, he like sniffs the flower, and he realizes, like, it's a fake flower. Oh. And then you cut to
it takes him
Mallory.
so long to realize it's
Yeah.
fake too. I'm like, dude, fake flower is nothing like a real.
Right,
Like you should have
right.
picked up on this when it was in your ear, honestly.
Yeah. And then it smash cuts to Mallory, who's floating on a boat in the middle of the ocean with a couple of young kids. And she's just staring a hole through the camera, looks completely unsettled, kind of like the witch's tendencies. That's like I said, like her her ability to pass herself off is very like I can turn it on, but like inside, like I'm still this like very savage primal thing. Like she's basically staring at the camera, like, you figured it out yet? You figured it out yet? You figured it out yet? Like yes, yes, we get it. You're the witch. At some point, somehow the witch survived even the car crash, came and took Mallory, and now this is what's happening. And in that, essentially, because when the dad found the altar, uh, it had all three family members, the mom, who wasn't even in the film till that point, the dad, and Ben, and I guess the brother, who I didn't even notice in the photo, like all their faces scratched out. And what I took away from that is like the witch letting them go is like two pronged. One, the witch realizes like, ooh, okay, so they even knew to burn the tree. I could have died. I could have lost, but I'm going to let them go because there's no way they're going to want to willingly keep messing with me at this point. But then
Yeah.
it's like, why reveal yourself at all? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why not wait until after Ben and them leave? I guess she didn't know Ben and them were about to leave anyway. But like the fake flower thing, like of course he was eventually going to realize that. I don't know. It's one of those things that like it works for the tease, but like you think the real world application, and it's kind of like, were you sure he was leaving? Were you sure he was going to just be like, ooh, okay, you're the witch? All right, well, you know what? Let's call it a truce.
Yeah, all good. She she made another mistake at the end, the witch. So what I noticed throughout the film, I was paying very close attention to this love interest.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember her name.
Mallory.
And Mallory, thank you. So every time Mallory is at the docks, she's always wearing her blue shirt, she's wearing shorts, and then she's got
Ridiculous
super
socks.
ridiculous socks. They're always like knee high. I mean, outrageous,
Kitty
especially
ears.
if it's hot outside. And in the last scene, she does not have those socks.
Hmm.
Where when I looked back, I focused on the picture because in the picture, that's the only time you see her wearing something where she's not wearing long socks. She wears shorts and long socks, and she wears crazy colored pants once. And in the picture, she's wearing like a dress or something, and she's got these like low top Vans and no socks with them. And you have to
Hmm.
realize that that picture is what the witch stole. So she might be basing her outfit off of like,
Off the
okay,
photos.
this is what the photo looks like.
That would
This
make
is how
more
this person dresses.
Yeah, that would make more sense why she steals the photos then, because she does break into the marina at one point and steal a photo of Mallory's family, and that's how she knows to go after the sister.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was like, oh, well, it's just the sister, but it was because she was trying to figure out how to mimic someone in that regard. So that's another very good catch there. I did not pick up on that.
And with the
But
first of the movie, the first girl she gets, the mother,
mhm,
not back in the 80s, you know, when we're in present day,
mhm.
her style changes significantly. I mean, she's like hardcore rocker, you know,
Yeah.
she's got this really like cool outfit on. And then after she gets taken over, she's dresses nonstop. So it's
Sundresses.
just like,
Yep.
how can I look? And I think that's a lot of it too, is why she decides to go for the women, is because there is a very sexual aspect to it. She's always wearing something that's going to look very attractive.
Mhm.
She's always manipulating men when she's in this female body. And, you know, even like when we were talking about she's having sex with him, I mean, that's one of the first things that happens when she changes. I mean, we're upstairs, we're watching through the window, and she is very sexually aggressive towards him, which I think has a lot to do with her manipulation tactics, whether it be in the moment or, you know, long term.
It definitely has to have like a long-term thing on them, because like if whispering something in their ear gets their attention, obviously a sexual act like that kind of intimacy and all that has to give her like either a greater or a longer lasting control over them, maybe a total one, like in the case of, you see eventually that he apparently just hangs himself at the end. When he's found, it looks like he's hung himself. So like in that regard, like, oh, okay. So when she just has no use for him, she basically is just like, go to your corner and hang, you know, something like that. That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it's an interesting film. It's very inventive. I liked the kind of refreshing take on a witch. I guess there are going to be some people who say it doesn't feel enough like it's a witch. Like we just see it's a witch. Like I know they go to like Wikipedia, which apparently is a real site.
Yeah, where I go for all my witch knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know that it's a very different take on a witch, but like it feels more rooted. And like if you think about like the Salem stuff and like the Halloween witches that you would perceive, like those sound like the less realistic ones where it's like if witches did exist, it probably would be more of like a Brothers Grimm kind of thing where it would be this very like she's basically like one with the forest essentially in this regard, always the tree roots and everything like that, muddy, just grimy and disgusting. Like it makes total sense that it would be like this kind of being or whatever in that fact. So I liked it. It was very different. I don't know like if I had to give it like a grade, what I would say. Like if I gave it like an A, a B or whatever, I'd probably give it like a B minus. I think I thought for like what it was and how small budget it was, I thought it delivered on a lot of things that felt fresh and inventive and kept me invested.
Yeah.
What did you?
I would probably go, B plus, maybe an A, even just because it was just such a fresh take. Honestly, the thing that threw me off with my first watch the most was the main kid. He so much feels like this is a kid that you just pulled straight out of like a Christian movie,
Yeah.
one of the million movies that same thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But when I watched it again, I really liked that aspect because it made me feel like, okay, this is a safe movie. We're not going to go there. And then there's, cursing and killing
Yeah.
kids. And he also, I loved his character because, after the thing happened with the cop, he doesn't just go back to his house like every other horror movie. He gets the gun from him, which
Yeah.
puts him in serious danger of getting caught and going to jail for the rest of his life, and takes a very like head on approach. He's like, hey, F it, I'm going for it. I'm going to kill this girl. So I liked how wholesome he felt,
Mm-hmm.
but how when shit hit the fan, he really just went for it and he was gonna
Yeah.
do something about it.
I see. I thought the casting worked for that reason. The fact that he did look like the kid that would be least likely. He almost felt out of place, like you said.
Yeah.
But the fact that he then adapts to that environment, I thought that actually made it work. He felt so out of place, and then by the end, his actions and his character fit perfectly within it. Where it's like, oh no, you are exactly the kind of person that's needed for this protagonist role. So, yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I think that there's going to be certainly some more good stuff from it. I wanted to look up, and I forgot to take note of it, who the director was. I wanted to kind of keep an eye out because I feel like this was a big enough success. We're going to definitely see more stuff of note from him in the future.
Yeah.
I don't see his name.
Another thing I kept going back on after I
Oh, here it
watched
is.
it,
Brett Pierce.
Brett Pierce, has he done anything else that's notable?
Let me pull it up here. Let's see. No, not that I'm seeing here. Like he did, I mean, he's done other stuff, but like nothing that's jumping out at me.
Mainstream enough where we've
He's
seen it.
directed 5 films. He did something called Smush, a Deadheads short, Deadheads, Secrets of Fenville, and Dead slash Undead. So his catalog goes back all the way to '02. And there was a 7-year gap between the Wretched and his previous thing. So I don't know. Maybe he's stepping into the role. Maybe he does more writing than directing. But regardless, I thought this was a really strong showing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so something else I wanted to talk about real quick is the drowning dream
Mm-hmm.
at the bus. I thought that was a really weird inclusion, and I felt like there might be something more to that I wasn't paying enough attention to, because that's the only time we see a future event.
Yeah,
And I mean, it's not like I had a dream and something happened close to it. He's literally dreaming about something that happened. And maybe that
premonition.
was, yeah, maybe that was a clue to this is what's going to happen, but also we're living in his memory. We're not living in real time because the brother's not in our movie. We don't get to see the brother
Yeah.
the whole time. So maybe that's saying, hey, this isn't real. Like what we're watching is not actually what's happening right now. Like other stuff has gone on. But I just thought that was interesting. I was like trying to figure out if they were trying to tell us, like, oh, maybe he's dead or maybe
Yeah.
something, but I couldn't really figure out where they were trying to go with that.
Yeah, that's a good call out for sure. I thought it was going to be the like you said, it's the unreliable narrator, but it's like a third person perspective still, which is kind of odd to follow him from a third person perspective, yet still through his vantage point enough that you see the world as he sees it. And it does feel like the premonition, because it's the only one like it. It felt like that should be like the climax, right? Like when that happened and then kind of as the story was playing out, I thought that was going to be something that happened like at the witch's tree or even in the witch's tree. I didn't realize it was going to be like, no, this is like the 3/4 point. Like that's a weird choice to me, especially since there's no reveal that like he did die or he even had to be resuscitated or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's that is a weird detail for sure that I don't think you need. I think it's just meant to like hook you in, and then like the callback works, but it doesn't work fully. Like when he does start to get drowned, you're like, oh, hey, yeah, no, we've seen this. That was the intro. But then when you put it under a microscope like we are, it doesn't quite feel like it works.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and there were two scenes, the dog scene, so the dog
mhm,
saving him from the police officer trying to kill him, which
mhm.
after he gets kind of shaken, he's got the gun on him and he chooses, I took that as he was manipulated, but he had a little
He was
bit of
aware.
himself still in there. So he's
Yep.
like, okay, I have a choice. I either kill this kid or I kill myself.
Yeah.
So he was able to kind of do that. But I mean, the dog scene, the dog just felt kind of out of nowhere. Now, when I
Mhm.
watched it the first time, I was like, okay, I'm fine. And really, the second time, I was still fine with it. But the dog just really did not. I mean, it was just like, wow, that's great that happened. Why is this dog here right now?
Yeah.
And, my dad is driving through the forest and happens to be right at the time where I, need a vehicle to smash this girl against a tree.
Yeah.
That one was very like father ex machina to me.
I was thinking about that too. I was like, man, the odds that the tree being this deep in the forest and there's like the entire path there, he knows exactly where to go, and it's always a wide enough path he can
Oh,
drive
he
a
was
fucking car
hauling
through
too.
it.
Yeah, he is just hauling ass the whole time. And you're like, I was in these woods earlier with the mom and the son, and I don't think there was the kind
Yeah.
of space to get your Jeep through there, bud.
Yeah, no, for sure. That was something that I was like, oh, that's convenient. Oh, he
Yeah.
survived. That's even more convenient. And there was a funny thing too where the mom is giving the dad shit, the actual mom, when they're like leaving and all that, he grimaces or something in the passenger seat, and she like gives him like some little jab, like a little bit of shit, like he's a baby complaining. I'm like, the man got stabbed and was in a car wreck. Like, it's amazing he's alive. Where have you been?
Yeah. You cry, baby.
Yeah.
We've been through some stuff, okay? Why don't you
Yeah.
back off?
Yeah, really. But anyway, yeah, so this was a cool watch. I definitely want to check out more from this. We're gonna have to figure out real soon what we want to take a look at next, because I definitely want to do a deeper dive on some of these. Doesn't have to all be horror by any means. Anything really that requires a little bit of theory and kind of uncovering deep diving, I think is an interesting choice. But definitely looking forward to doing more of these for it. And I think this was a really good starting point for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, well, guys, if you haven't already, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to Cheap Pop. And if you want to recommend another film for us, feel free to drop that in the comments too. But that's going to do it for our time. So until next time, peace.
Thanks, guys.